Congress and challenge me to be useful. My outspoken grandmother was Millicent Fenwick, a congresswoman from New Jersey who came to politics through the civil rights movement and marched with Leon Sullivan.
What impressed me the most about this country was a very simple fact, that all around me, in newspapers, in college classrooms, on TV and radio, there was an active dialogue, sometimes frustrating, but an active one, about our rights. In law school, we spent weeks talking about the 14th Amendment to the Constitution and its guarantee of equal protection. People talked about race, gender, sexual orientation. Even more exciting to me, people seemed empowered. They knew that if they spoke up, they could change things. As a Latina woman, I also realized that the opportunities open to me were there thanks to the efforts of many other people who in more difficult times demanded a more just society. So it's wonderful now to be with you to help honor those who marched 50 years ago in the name of equal rights for all. Yet in my work, I also see that the U.S. still has a long way to go. The U.S. has the largest reported prison population in the world. People of color are far more likely to be arrested or imprisoned than whites. Too many migrants live in fear of being torn away from their families, and that makes them easy prey.
Attempted. We must allow the people to vote. Everyone, remember that if you remember nothing else, rise up.
He serves with his father in ministry and his biological father, the Reverend Jasper Williams, Jr. He is the Reverend Joseph Williams, pastor of the
not because they're not smart enough, not because they're not talented enough, not because they're not ready to work hard enough, but because their parents may not be rich enough, because they may not be American enough, because they may not be documented enough. Dr. King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." He said the time is always right to do what's right. I say the time to break down the barriers of access to education is now. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for education. Most of us wouldn't be here if it weren't for education. The American dream is not a destination, it is a struggle. It is a struggle that takes the work of all of us. Let's struggle together, let's dream together. Mucha suerte a todos, luchemos juntos por el acceso a la educación. Gracias, God bless.
Our next speaker, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, economist and director of Columbia University Earth Institute.
If the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, as Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us, it is because righteous souls in each generation pull that arc towards its. We too must banish the moneylenders, not from the temple, but from the lobbies of Congress and the White House. We too must beat swords into plowshares, joining together with Iranians, Egyptians, Palestinians, and Israelis to honor the prophets of peace. And we must end our assault on nature, leaving oil and coal in the ground and harvesting the sun and the wind instead. In our age of greed and glitter, the work of justice often seems to be stilled. But do not be deceived, for the ancient cry still moves us today. Justice, justice shall you pursue, so that you may live in the promised land.
Our next speaker.
Hello, this is Ben Wicker. I am broadcasting live from the March on Washington 50th anniversary with We Act Radio 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., online on YouTube, powered by MoveOn.org. We are on the MoveOn.org front page, joined by Credo and a variety of partners from the progressive movement across the country. And I am delighted to begin today's coverage with an interview with a gentleman who was here 50 years ago. At the time, he was a rank-and-file union member. Now he's a union vice president. And he has lived through the whole arc of the civil rights movement and the progress in this country. And his granddaughter, who is also here, joining us at the March on Washington. So this is a very special way to begin today. I'm just going to make sure that we can all hear ourselves in the headphones. Boom. And here we are. So maybe I could ask you guys to just start by introducing yourselves to our listeners. Mr. Jones, if you could begin.
My name is Raglan George Jr. I'm the Executive Director of District Council 1707, AFSCME, New York. I'm also International Vice President of AFSCME.
My name is Diana Jackson, and I'm Raglan George's great-granddaughter.
Great-granddaughter. Excuse me. Mr. Jones, you look so young. I didn't know. All right.
I know. I'll market that later.
So.
Because we were so excited about it. But as we got closer to Washington and we were listening to the stories of buses not being able to come into Washington because the roads were so packed with people and the awesome mass of humanity that was coming into Washington, we got more and more excited. Now, the one thing that excited us more was the speeches before the major Martin Luther King speech were the speeches prior to that by women and other folks, leaders of this country, who came together and spoke from the church and the clergy and everywhere else. And that led up to the major speech that Martin Luther King gave, which was awesome. We were not able to be on top of it, but we heard it in the back, and we heard it. It was tremendous.
Yeah. And as you look over this span and think about today, what do you feel like has changed? What progress do you feel like has been made, and what's the most important thing to do now?
I think that march woke a lot of folks up, and it made them understand the needs of the people. It understands the needs of civil rights being a major part of the society that we live in, and everybody counts, and that we were not going to take it anymore. And I think legislators, along with other folks who were not interested in what was going on, but now are and were, and I think it woke everybody up, but then we let them go back to sleep. So we accomplished a lot in that march. We also lost a lot. We lost an opportunity to fill the public schools with some history about civil rights and labor and struggles in this country, and we missed that. We woke up again when Occupy Wall Street came about.
That's right.
Where the young folks came back to the fore and took charge and said, look, enough of this, let's change this society. And we let that get away. But we haven't lost it yet. We still have an opportunity to cap on that. But we're back here again to continue this march that took place in 1963, because we've got a lot more work to do. We watched Emmett Till and Michael Swerner. We watched Rodney King. We watched Kevin Martin. All of these sacrifices that we're making coming forward, and we still haven't got there yet. And people still.
Our next speaker, the social activist, civil rights leader, Chairman Emeritus of the Naacp.
Oh, yeah, that's it? Oh, I thought he forgot to give him his name. I met this man when I was just a sophomore in college. Ladies and gentlemen, was it Vice President of the United States? Ladies and gentlemen, long before there was a Barack Obama, there was a Julian Bond that was nominated for Vice President of the United States. And he was a citizen of the USA and a proud citizen of Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian Bond.
Thank you, thank you. I hope that didn't come out of my 2 minutes. I'm delighted to be here, just as I was delighted to be here 50 years ago. Then we could not have imagined we'd be here 50 years later with a black president and a black attorney general. But that's a measure of how far we have come. But still, we march. We march because Trayvon Martin has joined Emmett Till in the pantheon of young black martyrs. We march because the United States Supreme Court has eviscerated the Voting Rights Act, for which we fought and died. We march because every economic indicator shows gaping white-black disparities. We march for freedom from white supremacy. But still, we have work to do. None of it is easy, but we have never wished our way to freedom. Instead, we've always worked our way. Today, we have much more to work with, and we take heart that so much has changed. The changes that have come have everything to do with the work of the modern movement for civil rights. We must not forget that Dr. King stood for the people who made the mighty movement what it was. From Jamestown slave pens to Montgomery's boycotted buses.
Can you hear me now?
These ordinary men and women labored in obscurity. And from Montgomery forward, they provided the foot soldiers of the Freedom Army. They shared with King an abiding faith in America. They walked in dignity.
But you can hear me.
Rather than ride in
Okay, all right, great. So first of all, we got the Black Youth Project participating in this march today, and people who are watching it online or listening to it on the radio. Like, given that we want to have more young people on stage, we got you right here, right now.
I think we have an overall message of solidarity. So we have so many different issues that are represented within VYP, and the message that we want to get out to everyone is that there's space for everyone in the movement. It doesn't have to be a prioritizing, your issue over my issue over your issue. That there's space for everyone to be the best leader that they can be within our space, and that if we work together, we can really kind of collectively outwit, if you will, our opponent.
Right. So tell me, so what's next for VYP after today? I mean, I know you guys have been doing amazing work this year and in previous years. What's next for you after today? What's the next big thing you're working on?
Well, I think, as Bakari mentioned, is that we all 100 of us work on separate issues, but we're finding now ways how we can collaborate across sectors and make sure that we recognize that any injustice in any community, regardless of whatever issue it is all of our issue. And so now we're moving forward with trying to create a platform where young people always feel like their voices are being heard and always feel like their issues are being represented.
That's amazing. That's important, and that's what this movement is all about. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
He said too much war, too few jobs, too little social uplift. Mr. Moral and spiritual background.
Skill, his problem rating went down, but his values and standards went up. He said, reject me, if you will, those who want to embrace me, but I was speaking will be heard. And so keep dreaming of the constitutional right to vote. Stop the madness in North Carolina and Texas. Keep dreaming. Keep dreaming, revive the war on poverty.
Stand our ground for justice. On behalf of the National Bar Association, the nation's oldest and largest bar association of attorneys of color, founded in 1925, I'm very honored to be here today. For the last 88 years, the National Bar Association has always stood its ground by using our legal skills to oppose and dismantle unjust laws like stop and frisk. As social engineers, we will continue to stand our ground to protect voting and civil rights, like the recent voter nullification case in Alabama, Ford versus Strange. We will stand our ground to protect equal pay and equal access to justice and all of our constitutional rights. The National Bar Association also supports the Trayvon Martin Foundation to end or amend these vigilante laws. Much progress has been made in the 50 years since Dr. Martin Luther King stood right here. But now, all of the many legal gains that we have made are under relentless attack. We can't stop our progress. We can't go back. We must not go back. Stand with me. Stand with the National Bar. We're going to stand.
And at that time, one of the great things we were fighting for was to make Martin Luther King a national holiday. And I think, it is a positive and exciting development that Martin Luther, I think people don't realize this, but Martin Luther King wasn't mainstream in America, even in the 70s and 80s. And but over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen that he has been, and his legacy's been accepted as inherently part of the American dream. But now what we need to do is enact what his dream was about into reality, because sadly still, particularly as it gets to economics, we have not enacted and seen the progress that we've seen in other areas, particularly as it relates to racial economic inequality.
Good. So what are the core elements of the economic policy agenda that you're working on at the NAACP?
Well, we've had 4 main program areas. One program area is fair lending, that really came out of the Great Recession and the mass foreclosure crisis, and trying to work with whether it's nonprofit organizations, major banks, and with policy people about how to create sustainable home ownership. African Americans are still minority homeowners, meaning that less than 50%, really about 43% of African Americans are homeowners. Home ownership is the #1 source of wealth. So because of what's happened with the economy, what's happened with Trayvon Martin, what's happened with racial profiling laws and Voting Rights Act, was much more of a recognition that this needs to be a recommitment, a reignition of a movement dealing with a lot of the issues that they dealt with in '63, and make sure that we get them right today in 2013.
So, while you were 9 or 10, I was not quite 1 yet.
Okay. So you're still in your 30s. You're just still a young man. Very good.
My question about that, though, is it feels like in the last 30 years, we've seen the entire progressive movement not only grow and diversify.
Doesn't have a will, and hopefully today we will say that yes, the country does have the will.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
They were demanding jobs, demanding freedom, and desiring to live the American dream. Things that
'50th anniversary. I'm joined with my co-host, Garland Gilchrist II of MoveOn.org. We are live with the We Act Radio live stream powered by MoveOn.org, Ethical Electric, streaming support by Credo. And we are joined by our guest, Dr. Charles Thiel Jr., the president. What's the thing that stands out to you?
Well, the first thing come to mind is that I was an elected official for 18 years. I was one of the first black city council person in the city of Tuscaloosa. They have classism, which is just as bad as racism. We reach a certain plateau, and we think that we have arrived. And I tell them, well, you might have arrived, but you got off at the wrong station. You're not at your destination. So don't repeat the same mistakes that.
Dream speech in Detroit, Michigan, at a march hosted by Reverend C.L. Franklin, Reverend Albert Clegg, Walter Reuther, all of the leadership of labor, the NAACP, and the Urban League.
Restrict the right to vote for millions of Americans. And we're at a point in our country right now that millions of people are without protections in our country. And it's vital that the U.S. Congress
Each year, Planned Parenthood across the country sees nearly 3 million patients. These women and men of all ages and backgrounds don't come to Planned Parenthood to make a political statement. They come to get quality, affordable health care, which we provide. And yet, already this year, we have seen a record number of laws, almost 700, that would cut off access not only to safe and legal abortion, but to birth control, STD and cancer screenings, even sex education. Now, back in the 60s,
we as a nation face many barriers in our efforts to achieve greatness, and we have been dealt some harsh setbacks. In the words of Dr. King, now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. We have the means to make these promises real. What we need is the political will and the populist commitment to these principles. We need leaders who have the moral compass to make such a commitment to making real the promises of our democracy. So today we are 18 million Asian Americans proud to stand once again with our brothers and sisters in the civil and human rights community, still committed to, still striving for, still shaping better Americans for a better America in pursuit of the dream.
The next speaker, President
And what we recognize is that our Constitution promises us, much like any promissory note, a check, if I might, that we would have all the protections, rights, and privileges of citizenship. But when we look at the African American community and so many others, we know we fall far short. In essence, as we brought that check forward to cash, it came back stamped insufficient funds. So as we look at the challenges then and challenges now, we see we've come a long way. It's a good time to mark our progress, but also to rechart our direction, where we have to go to fulfill that promise. We know this, we look at voter registration, whatnot. Most people think that everyone should be able to vote. In '63, that wasn't necessarily the belief. They believe that some people just shouldn't be able to do it. So in essence, we've gotten past that. We believe there should be equality for all. If you talk to anyone on the streets, they'll say there should be equal justice and protection for everyone. So we've come a long way in how we perceive those issues, but the reality is something quite different. We know if we look at issues like the criminal justice system, we know that we have 2.4 million Americans in our prisons, but 40% are African Americans. African Americans are only 12.4% of the national population. If we look at issues like education, we know that we drop out at a much higher rate. We know that we don't move on or matriculate as we should, or matriculate through our schools. So we know there's still challenges there. If we look at basic issues like housing and wealth, we know that
living wage and equal pay for work of equal value. As women, we demand benefit increases, not cuts, in Social Security and Medicare and the social programs that serve and employ women as the social workers and the nurses and the teachers and the child care workers. And because the war on women is so very, very real, as women, we demand a voting
on injustices of our country's legal system and the vicious attack on our right to vote. He had a dream, we need a team, joined by the nation's first black president, who must use his bully pulpit to remind America of the commitment to racial justice. Since we know that the death of the first Martin King is linked to the death of the second Martin Trayvon, because they were both unjustly profiled by an intolerant slice of our population. When we do this, we will be able to sing together the words of that great anthem from the last century. The sun don't shine forever, but as long as it's here, we might as well shine together. Better now than never, business before pleasure. He had a dream, we need a team.
Good morning, friends. I'm pleased to be gathered here with more than 30,000 NAACP peers from across this nation. NAACP, show up! We gather here to honor this golden moment in the history of civil rights. There is no greater way for us to do this than for us to have
assessment of the challenges we face today and to be the courageous leaders to meet those challenges. I only got 2 minutes, but I've got 2 hard truths that I want to leave with you. First, last year, in the face of an onslaught of outrageous restrictions on our right to vote, we turned out in unprecedented numbers. Our challenge today, my friends, is to vote in all elections, especially in non-presidential elections, because when we have not, the consequences have been devastating. The House and the Senate are headed for regressive majorities in 2014. So I want you to raise your right hand and take a pledge with me today and say that I promise to vote every year, in every primary, and in every election, no matter what is on the agenda. Now I want you to go back home and tell your neighbors and your families to take that same pledge. Second, we were honored. Courage will not skip this generation. Peace and power.
Before I introduce the next guest, I wish that you could see the fact that
kids at the mercy of
people are as far back as World War II Memorial. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's a full house, and buses are backed up, still trying to get here. The official program starts at 11, and we still have buses coming in. Our next speaker, Dr. Maneska Elatambi, Senior Vice President, CPO, Communities Without Borders International. Please, a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. In New Jersey.
As we're recognizing that every American in this country should have equal protection under the law, I have to say to you that I am running for making sure that the women who lost access to healthcare services when Chris Christie cut funding for Planned Parenthood, that they have access to those healthcare services. That for the men and women for whom Chris Christie vetoed marriage equality legislation, that they have an opportunity to have their relationships recognized. I live in a state where our governor has yet to take a position on the voting rights decision that came down recently. In New Jersey, there are 20% of the population are Latinos and Latinas. Governor Christie has refused to accept that dreamers who are here in this country and only want the opportunity to be able to further their education, he has refused them that right. And instead he stands with people like Steve King, who refer to dreamers as not scholars but criminals.
Terrible, terrible. I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's so important and it's one of the big issues that people are out here representing today.
Good. So, well, one last question is that what's the message that you want to send to all the people that are here, that are passionate, that are energetic, and not only remembering what happened 50 years ago on these steps of the Lincoln Memorial, but what do you want to tell them to do for the next 50 years?
I think it is to take the energy and the spirit that we are feeling here today and to bring it back home into our communities and in our neighborhoods and in our states. Because as there are thousands of men and women who made history in 1963, it is now our turn to make history in 2013 for the next 50 years. We need to change this world. We need to make it a better one. And it means that every one of us has to recognize that we are a leader. We need to speak up for those who don't have a voice and use our voice to demand social and economic justice for everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, Millie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been really wonderful experience.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
My name is Annette Holt. I lost my beautiful son Blair to the streets of Chicago, to gun violence, and my voice matters.
My name is Colin Goddard. I was shot 4 times at the school shooting at Virginia Tech, and my voice matters.
From gun homicide than a white one, and we are here to say, my voice matters. We are here because of the gun violence that does not make national headlines, the 90 gun deaths that happen every day, the 8 children and teens killed every day, enough to fill more than 100 classrooms, and we are here to say, my voice matters. We are here because of Trayvon Martin, because in this great nation of ours, George Zimmerman, a man with an arrest record and a known history of violence, can get a permit to walk our streets with a loaded gun and can chase down and murder an innocent boy in the name of standing his ground and get away with it. And we are here to say, my voice matters. We are here because there are children in our great nation like these that cannot even feel safe walking to school in the morning, and who go to sleep at night hearing gunshots out their window. And we are here to say, my voice matters. We are here from cities and suburbs and farmland, not as Republicans and Democrats, not as white, black, Latino, or Asian, but as proud Americans, all of us who know that as a nation we are better than this. And we are here to say, my voice matters. And we are here to hold Congress accountable, to make this the safer nation we all want and deserve, to make the cowardly Congress people who do the bidding of the corporate gun lobby fear us, the American people, more, to remind them that they work for us, the American people, and if they don't do right by us, they won't work for us much longer. Too many of our elected leaders have been selling us out for too long, and every day more people, more children are literally dying as a result. Well, we are here to say enough is enough, and we are here to say my voice matters. In the crowd, you'll see hundreds of volunteers with Red Voices Against Violence t-shirts like these. Just sign up with them, and next week we'll put you in touch with your congressperson so you can tell them that your voice matters. Also, go to www.voicesagainstviolence.com, which we're launching here today, and be part of the first ever petition that you sign with your voice. It's an easy and powerful way to make your voice matter. 50 years ago, Dr. King inspired a nation with his dream. He inspired the American public to come together as never before to stand up to great injustice. And he showed us what we're capable of as a nation when we have truth and justice on our side. And today, we desperately need to come together in exactly that same spirit to address one of the great issues of this day, the issue of gun violence. Now is the time to come together as a nation, from the suburbs of Newtown, Connecticut, to the urban streets of Newark, New Jersey, to the homes and communities of every American who longs to live free from the tyranny of violence. It is time we come together as individuals and as one to tell Congress that we will not be ignored as our communities are being destroyed, to make our voices heard in passionate support of the solutions that clearly exist, and most importantly to say, my voice matters!
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tony Bennett.
Thank you. Lend your voice against violence. Let someone start believing in you. Let him hold out his hand. Let him find you and watch what happens when someone who can look in your eyes and see into your heart. Let him touch you and watch what happens cold. No, I won't believe your heart is cold. Maybe slow to warm on an evening such as this. Yes, let someone with a deep love to give his deep love to you. What magic you'll see. Let someone give his heart, someone who cares like me.
To give every American a chance, and I think when we start picking and choosing
neighborhoods based on their ability to tax themselves. I think that is a disaster for America. So that has been my focus in recent months. It's very obvious what's happening, and so it's an honor to be here today to come here and have an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah. What's the feeling that you have as you look out and see tens of thousands, maybe more than that, people gathered here in this spirit of fighting for justice?
Was 21 years old. He's part of a movement in Alabama. He said, "What advice do you have?" Intellectual curiosity.
On 2863, my parents.
Speak a little bit about youth engagement and your sort of like fight to stay young. You've really done a great job in terms of digital media and social media.
We realize that if you really want to touch the hearts and minds
As a matter of fact, I would like to offer the opportunity to the band to just take 5. Yeah.
Of people that are here. I've been here for a couple hours just reporting, and I gave myself this is really terrible, but a quota of different kinds of people to talk to.
In talking to people, post on to someone who
not even